Dear fans and viewers in front of the screen, good evening to you all. Welcome to the Chinese Building Association of New South Wales Building and Development Seminar. I'm Andy and I'm honored to be your host for today's online event. Firstly, I would like to thank City Media Australia for providing us the platform for live streaming this episode of Building and Development Seminar, and also welcome viewers from City Media Australia. For our new friends, I would like to introduce our association. Chinese Building Association of New South Wales was established in January 2020. Mission for our association is to empower members to succeed through professional development and industry connections. Our association has created a professional development platform to help members grow their business and to help the industry become better. CBA New South Wales hosts a series of member events, including business events such as Industry Conference, Building and Development Seminar, Career Expo, and the Industry Summit. We also host regular social events such as sport and barbecue parties that create wonderful opportunities for our members to socially interact with each other. We aim to provide latest information about the building and developing industry. If you are interested in our events or contents, please scan the QR code on the screen to add our WeChat assistant for more information. Next, I would like to thank the sponsor for today's event, Energy Trade. Energy Trade is an Australia-owned and operated company that specializes in energy management. Their services vary from energy procurement and management to energy generation and energy efficient technologies for residential, commercial, and industrial projects. Thank you very much, Energy Trade, for supporting our event today. Also, on behalf of our association, I would like to thank all of our annual sponsors. Without your support and trust, the association will not be what it is today. If you want to support our Building and Development Seminar, you can do so by sponsoring our events. If you would like to sponsor one of our events, please contact our assistant for more information. The topic for today's event is Planning and Development Updates with Cumberland City Council. And we have invited 4 important guests from the Cumberland City Council who I will introduce shortly. Cumberland City Council is located in Sydney's western suburbs, about 25 kilometers from the Sydney Central Business District. The council was formed in May 2016, covering 72 square kilometers of the western suburbs of the Greater Sydney region. Cumberland City is the 5th largest local government area for population in New South Wales. Cumberland City is regarded as a rapidly growing area, boasting the Cumberland community as the epicenter of modern multicultural Australia, featuring a diverse and young community. In this period of economic recovery and growth in Greater Sydney, it is recognized that planning has a major role to play. In today's section, you will hear from senior representatives at Cumberland City Council talking about major projects, new planning control in place, and considerations for lodging development applications. There will also be an opportunity to ask questions to Council to assist in the work that you are doing in the area. Now, I would like to formally introduce our special guest. Firstly, let's welcome Mr. Daniel Cavello, Director, Environment and Planning. Mr. Cavello, would you like to say hello to the audience?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cavello. Next, let's welcome Mr. Daniel Anderson, Executive Manager, Environment and Planning Systems. Mr. Anderson, would you like to say hi?
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for having us here tonight.
Thank you very much. Next, let's welcome Mr. Jai Shankar, Executive Manager, Development and Building. Mr. Shankar, would you like to say hi?
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. And lastly, let's welcome Mr. Christopher Manowski, Senior Coordinator, Place and Engagement. Mr. Manowski, would you like to say hi?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us here.
Thank you so much. Once again, I would like to thank all of our special guests for being here with us today. Before we move on to today's agenda, I would like to invite Vice President of Chinese Building Association New South Wales, Mr. Billy Chen, to say a few words on behalf of the association and formally welcome our guest.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. I think this is the night that a lot of our members have been waiting for. And we're absolutely honored to have the planning team of Cumberland Council to be with us today. I know it is the busiest time of the year for you guys now. And with the council election going on, we can still have this time with you guys, this means a lot to us. So thank you very much for your attendance. As you know, Cumberland Council, Cumberland is probably one of the most populated LGAs in New South Wales. It resides about 250,000 people. Is that right? It's probably 250,000 people in there. Yeah, and definitely it's one of the fast growing area in the Western Sydney area. So I know many of our members invest and work in the area of Cumberland. And I hope today's event will give our members a more insightful view of Council's plans and their recently adopted control plans too. And I'll also hope that CBA New South Wales will become a connecting bridge for future dialogues between our members and Cumberland Council. So thank you very much once again, and let the night begin.
Thank you very much, Billy. Today's agenda is divided into 6 important parts. Firstly, Mr. Daniel Cavello will give us a welcome speech and a brief introduction to tonight's topic. And secondly, Mr. Christopher Manuski will give us an introduction of the local council and major projects. Next, Mr. Cavello will talk about recent LEP updates and key changes in the area. Then Mr. Daniel Anderson will talk about planning proposals. Followed by that, Mr. Jai Shankar will share with us about development, applications, lodgement, and considerations. Lastly, we will have a Q&A section in which our guests will directly address questions from our audience. Just a friendly reminder to our viewers, if you have any question, please leave them in the chat room or add our WeChat assistant and send the question directly to him. Our assistant will be collecting them, and our guest speakers will address them in the Q&A section at the end. Thanks very much for your cooperation. Next, I will hand the screen to our guest today. Let's welcome Mr. Daniel Cavello. You may share the screen now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, good. Great. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. Cumberland City Council is a strategic location in Western Sydney, and there's a lot happening in our area, and we're pleased to share with you members tonight about some of the things happening in Cumberland and how you can work with Council in ensuring that planning and development happens in a smooth and timely way. Tonight, we'll be sharing a range of information, and we're happy to take questions at the end. We're also happy to have any follow-up questions from members, and we can discuss those after the session tonight, because we know there's a lot of detail that we'll be going through. So I'll hand over to Chris, who will get things started. Chris, over to you.
Thank you, Daniel. We'll just go to the next slide, please. Thanks, Daniel. So good evening, everyone. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands that we work on today and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that participate in planning in Cumberland. I want to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and recognise and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal people and the ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of New South Wales. So we've gone through introductions, but for those that want to, we have our email addresses there. If you guys want to contact us at any time, I'm happy to take any questions in terms of community engagement as well. So if there's anything you can triage through me, I'm happy to do so. Okay, so what I'll do today is I'll go through a brief sort of breakdown of what Cumberland Council looks like in terms of its economic profile. There's a few statistics that will show on the screen, and I'll go through those. And after that, I'll give a brief of 4 of the major projects that Council has undertaken in the past couple of years, and one upcoming one as well. So as you can see in the map, we're located in the western suburbs, about 25 kilometres from the central business district. And as we stated before, we are the epicenter of modern multicultural Australia, and we feature a very diverse and a very young community. So about us, we're very right to say that we are at about 250,000 people. So the total population, according to our statistics, we are at about 260,000, with about just over 22,000 total households in Cumberland. Our community is extremely diverse, and I think what's relevant here is that 12.7% of our residents in Cumberland are from Chinese ancestry, and on top of that, 52% of them are born overseas, and 19% of them are young people aged 12 to 25. So we cater to a range of people who are driven and take on innovation as part of their track on going forward for their education, for their career paths, and we boast that we provide those opportunities for those young people to be able to participate in what they can and what they want to in the city. Whilst only 6% of our population attend university, we have a workforce that are quite driven, especially in the construction and manufacturing industries as well. So in terms of our local economy, we have just under 110,000 employed residents, and 88,000 of those are local jobs. We boast a large range of local businesses, with just under 25,000 local businesses in Cumberland, with a GRP at $12.3 billion. So we are the home to a number of successful construction companies that are headquartered in our city, and they operate Australia-wide. And recently, local construction activity has primarily consisted of residential, infrastructure, and commercial upgrades. The strength of the sector in the local economy is very evident, as you can see in that little graph there. And the sector is worth $1.15 billion to the city's GRP, and that makes up approximately 11% of overall industry output. So I want to talk about a few of the key projects that we've been working on. And the first one you can see in our backgrounds here is the Granville Centre. So the Granville Centre is a new multi-purpose community centre that has library, arts and cultural facilities in the Granville Gardens. So the new $23 million purpose-built facility offers vital spaces for learning and digital innovation, and it's at the heart of Granville. So just near South Street, which is the high street of Granville. So the facilities include a wide range of resources, including a digital recording equipment and software, photography, videography, as well as virtual reality and robotics capabilities in their rooms. It's a space where producers, editors, artists, and other mentors and aspiring talents can go and play music and explore the digital and creative influences in their jobs. Other spaces and facilities include the library, which is the back of house, the storage and offices, an art gallery, a multi-purpose art space, a community center, including a large hall and multi-purpose rooms, a new pool entry, including a cafe and a kiosk area, storage and amenities, and a multi-sports court and playground on the side of it, as you can see in the photo on the bottom left. One that's quite recent is the Eric Tweeddale Stadium. So named after Eric Tweeddale, Australia's oldest living wallaby, the newly opened stadium is built with a functions facility to replace the current structures at Granville Park. So the work undertook a grandstand for 750 spectators, both male and female home and away change rooms, a multi-purpose room and office, spectator amenities, a community function room seating 155 people with full commercial kitchen, bar, canteen, and covered viewing deck. We also included a renewal of the car parking area to accommodate 127 spaces, including lighting and stormwater filtration systems. The International Standard Rugby Field was reconfigured and reconstructed from the old Granville Park field, which now includes spectator mounds, LED scoreboard, stormwater drainage, irrigation, and the LED flood lighting. The third project is the Wentworthville Memorial Swim Centre. So the upgrade of the local aquatic centre was to meet the needs of the growing community and is currently being looked after by Bob Graveyard. The swimming centre is a beautiful, newly renovated facility, and council carried out a $12.2 million upgrade. And this now offers a new warm pool, a leisure pool with beach entry, new change rooms, and a lift has also been installed to cater to those who have a disability to use a 50-metre pool. The centre also includes a new cafe that can be accessed from the main road and is open to the general public. And the last one I want to talk about is the most exciting one, which is an upcoming project, which is the Maryland Civic Square. As you can see in the photos, it's still in draft, but the new Civic Square in the heart of Maryland's town centre provides new open space for a growing community. So the Civic Square is located between McFarland Street and Maryland's Road, and it utilises the part of the former council car park and the Maryland's Arcade. So you can see on the screen the initial concepts for the Civic Square, and they've been drawn from the community's feedback in 2 rounds of engagement with the community. This helped us shape and inform the design that you see on the screen today. So with that in mind, with the design of the Civic Square is delivered to be a place for civic events and celebration, an active space with cafes and restaurants, a meeting place for the whole community, a place that is flexible for small groups and families, as well as large gathering and events, a space that is safe both day and night, a place that means Cumberland, and a unique landmark in the city with colour and shelter. So those are part of our place principles as well. So moving forward, when we design and co-design our spaces, we look at those principles to inform us on how the decisions should be made to make our places as inclusive as possible and to really brand what Cumberland City is. And we recognise that we are quite unique, and we want to tailor the way our city centres are to the uniqueness of Cumberland. Awesome. Thank you so much for hearing me out, guys. I really appreciate it. I'll pass it on to Daniel. He can talk about recent LEP upgrades and key changes.
So thanks, Chris, for that. This section talks about the new planning controls for Cumberland City. And being a young council, these are the first planning controls that have been set up specifically for Cumberland. What they do is bring together the controls of the former council areas into one document. But what we've also done is streamlined and make them relevant for development today in Cumberland City. So in terms of the documents, the first aspect around the planning controls is the local environmental plan. And this is the document that provides the framework for development. So it has information on zoning, on height of buildings, on density, on specific controls locally. And this is the legal framework that we use to facilitate development in Cumberland. As I mentioned before, there was 3 former LEPs or local environmental plans that applied to Cumberland, and now those have been repealed and the new Cumberland LEP commenced operation on the 5th of November this year, which is just early this month. So as part of the work we did around that process, we looked at the controls that we had. We looked at what the similarities and differences were between the former council areas, and we looked at what was best fit for Cumberland in the future. So a lot of it's bringing together the controls to have a single approach, a consistent approach. And we also looked at new areas where we could respond to what state government was doing in terms of their housing codes, for example, but also improvements to heritage and the environment around us. So in terms of the local environmental plan, the screen here has a summary of the key changes. There's a lot of detail there that the team can share separately. But what we've tried to do is have a consistent planning control across Cumberland City. And what we've tried to do is make sure that if there's state codes and guidelines, for those to be integrated into the controls that we have. Specifically for the local environmental plan, we've also had some changes to the zoning height and density in Auburn Town Centre and Lithcombe Town Centre. And that was based on work over a number of years that was included as part of the LEP. For low density development, we've removed the FSR control. So relying on controls such as frontage and height to guide how houses are developed in those zones. For dual occupancy development, we've reduced lot size from 585 square metres to 550 square metres. And that's to provide different types of housing in Cumberland. And as Chris mentioned, a lot of young people, a lot of growing families, and trying to help provide different housing options for them. But we've also looked to the future. So as an example, urban heat, which is about how do we minimise heat and impact with loss of trees and loss of landscaping. We've got provisions to make sure that development is light in colour, is efficient in use of energy, minimises retention of heat, but also looks at aspects like landscaping and trees to help cool down areas and to make sure that development is resilient for the future. So it's an example where we've set a benchmark, which no other council has done to date, and it's a benchmark that other councils are keen to follow. The second part of the planning controls is the development control plan. And this document is a brand new document that was prepared specifically with Cumberland in mind and also commenced on the 5th of November. The development control plan provides a lot of details about controls and they accompany the local environmental plan. So on the screen, it provides the contents of what the development control plan is. And I'm pleased to say that as part of this work, we've reduced it from 3 separate documents that are quite big to one single document of only a few hundred pages. We've gone from thousands of pages to hundreds of pages, which is a great outcome. So in terms of the information, we've got information on development for residential, and that's both housing, townhouses, residential flat buildings. We've got controls about development in business zones, whether that's for commercial premises, offices, for mixed use development. We've got controls around industrial zones, such as warehousing and industry. We've also got controls around particular land uses. So these are things such as schools, such as childcare, such as places of public worship, having some specific controls to respond to the needs of the area and also make sure that we support development and minimise impact on the community. Part F provides a lot of site-specific controls across Cumberland, and they're broken up into 4 areas. So they look at locations such as town centres, they look at locations such as specific sites and growth areas, and they also look at areas that are subject to growth and change based on the housing strategies from council and supported by the state government. So we have detailed specific controls for development in those areas, and those accompany the general controls that will apply. We also have a range of other controls in Part G that look at the range of aspects such as traffic and transport, stormwater, flooding, heritage, environmental management, and a range of other controls. And they're areas that do apply from time to time with development. So with the development control plan here, we've got a single set of controls, a set of controls that we believe are easy to understand, and the team is available to assist if you need further information on those controls and how they apply. We also have these controls on Cumberland City Council's website. So those controls are available for people to look at, both the local environmental plan and the development control plan. So that provides an overview of the recent planning controls introduced in Cumberland. And I'll hand over now to Daniel Anderson to talk about the processes around rezonings or planning proposals in Cumberland.
Thanks, Daniel. So following on what Daniel mentioned in terms of the recent gazettal finalisation of the Cumberland LEP, there may be situations where a particular landowner has a certain planning control for that site, and that planning control may not suit the vision that they may have for that particular site. So there's a planning proposal process that is been set by the state government to follow to basically change the planning controls on that site and obviously make a change to the LEP, as Daniel mentioned before. So it's quite a rigorous process. There's multiple stages. The main part is the first part, which is strategic merit assessment. So in that phase, we look at things like traffic, public amenity, social impact, a whole range of issues to make sure that that particular development doesn't obviously adversely impact that local community, and also more broadly, depending on the size of the proposal. Attached to the planning proposal process, there's a fair amount of consultation with the community, and our council notification policy also provides a bit more explanation on how we engage with our community through that process to make sure all residents, not just locally but across the LGA, are fully aware of what the intentions are for that site. And in some situations, Daniel mentioned obviously the DCP, there may be specific situations depending on the proposal where it require a DCP amendment, depending on that situation. Could you go to the next slide, please? So, as I said, it's a legislative process that is quite lengthy. As you can see, there's a number of steps that we need to go through. So the first one, similar to, I suppose, a DA, is you need a lodge it. But before that, we like to discuss any ideas or concepts with landowners before they lodge. As I said, it's a very lengthy process and can sometimes be quite costly in terms of consultants and other costs through that process. We definitely want to make sure we discuss the preliminary merits of a proposal prior to being lodged, and we make sure that we do as many checks and balances as we can before that's lodged to make sure it's a smooth process from then on in. So as soon as it's lodged, there is I suppose a situation where in terms of timeframes, the state government has very, very strict timeframes that we need to meet, and we want to make sure that we meet those KPIs. Once it's been lodged, after that lengthy preliminary pre-lodgement process, that's when council puts it straight on exhibition. So in its raw format, that goes out for 28 days on council's engagement platforms on our website. And that's where we try and get as many submissions as we can from residents to basically seek their views in terms of whether they support it or whether they see some issues. So we can obviously take that on board through that process. From once we get all those submissions, it goes then to the Cumberland Local Planning Panel, which is our independent planning panel for all things planning in Cumberland. And council officers write a report based on the strategic merit assessment and submissions, and that report goes to them for their consideration advice. They are not a determining authority, so they only provide advice to council on potentially the strategic merits or any other ideas that they may see fit to alter or amend or enhance the proposal in that form. And then once it goes through that panel, we get into briefing our councillors to make sure they're certainly aware of obviously what's going on. And briefings are held quite regularly, and we've done a number of recent briefings this year with plenty of council planning proposals, and we like to make sure our councils are very briefed. So when it does go to council on the next step, they're fully aware of what's coming to them, and there's no potentially, obviously, we try and reduce the risk of any issues arriving through the council report process. And then once we get a decision, depending on what the council decides, it goes to what they call the gateway. So that's basically submitting it to the state government for their basically determination. And so it's typically it might take up to 2 months, sometimes more, depending on the size of the proposal, for them to make a determination on whether they think they should proceed to what we call finalisation. So once, depending on sometimes we get certain amendments or suggestions from Department of Planning on how we can change it to suit their requirements, both locally and regionally. We take that on board. We work the proponent very closely all the way along, and then the next step is our post-exhibition gateway process, where we basically, with some of the changes that have occurred throughout the process, we exhibit it again for 28 days. And then once that comes off exhibition, it goes back to council for a final report based on that feedback from the community, and then it goes into the finalisation process. So this process all up can take anywhere from 12 months up to 2 years. It really depends on the size and complexity of the proposal. It is certainly a lot lengthier than your typical DA because there's many factors that we need to take into account throughout this process and its impact on the community. So that's why there is a lot of work that goes through both from council and the proponent through this process. And as I said to begin with, we want to make sure that whatever's been lodged, we've gone through a fairly rigorous due diligence process to make sure what's being lodged, we believe there is some strategic merit in proceeding with. Also, in accordance with the legislation, another thing that also needs to be done in tandem with this is what they call a voluntary planning agreement. So basically what that means is basically what we're trying to do is capture some of the extra value that's gained by the additional planning controls. So for example, if you've got a building that's set at height at 50 metres and you want to raise that to 100 metres, whatever the proposal might be, we look at the value, the extra value that is captured in terms of the gross floor area, the additional gross floor area, and negotiate a market rate. And then we capture that value negotiation with the proponent, and then we utilise that value, whether it be cash or it could be an in-kind contribution or a dedication of a park or something like that, to ensure that we offset the impact of that development on the local area. So as I said, it could be embellishing a park, or it could be some traffic or transport upgrades. There's a whole range of different initiatives that we try and look at for that immediate area to offset any adverse impacts that the development might have and to enhance the community. So I think that's it on planning proposals. I'll hand it back to Jay then to talk about DAs in terms of lodgement and considerations.
Thanks, Daniel. And hey, everyone. My name is Jay, and I'm the Development Manager of Cumberland City Council. A little bit of background about myself. I'm a town planner by profession, which is not surprising. And I've been with Council for over 6 years. What my team does at Council is we do the development management, which is effectively your development applications, your building applications, your tree applications, and engineering matters as well, which includes development engineering, stormwater engineering, design engineering, and also the traffic engineering as well. And I'll be talking to you today with regard to how we deal with development applications at Cumberland regarding the lodgement and considerations of it. Next slide, please, Daniel. So we've got a pretty robust pre-lodgement system that we have, and we encourage the residents and applicants to use this process with council. The advantages of that is effectively sort of you get a gauge of where what our thoughts are on the proposal. So a lot of applicants do use this process, and the reason for that is you get some pretty detailed written advice as to whether sort of we can move forward with the proposal to a DA stage, or what changes are required, or if it's not possible, we'll tell you right up front as well. Now, I'll take you through the process of that. Now, we've got obviously a separate application form for the pre-lodgement process, and that application form's on the council website, and that lists down the information that we need. The more information you give us at that point, the more detailed the advice is going to be. But at a bare minimum, we need effectively, your architectural plans and a statement of what the proposal is going to be. Once that's lodged in and the appropriate fees are paid, an officer within council will be in touch, more likely a development planner or a senior development planner. They'll set up a meeting. These days, it's obviously mostly online because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and we'll go through the application with you. At the meeting, what normally happens is that we allocate usually an hour or just over, and we've got our engineers there, our landscaping officers, and any other officers at council that requires to provide input on the pre-lodgement. And after the meeting, at the meeting, there's the opportunity sort of for the applicant or the residents to ask us questions and for us to give advice on that as well. What happens usually after the meeting is we provide that written advice, and it's it's imperative that sort of the residents and the applicants follow that written advice in the lodgement of the application. With the pre-lodgements, so far it's been successful in making sure that there's no massive issues identified, especially when a DA is lodged, because all these issues are ironed out before the actual proper application is lodged. So it's beneficial for both the applicants and the developers, and also council officers as well. Next slide, please, Daniel. So I'll take you through now the lodgement, the actual development application lodgement process. So once that pre-lodgement meetings has occurred and the advice is provided, that'll form the basis of the application and the information that we need to progress the actual development application. The rules have changed slightly. No longer do you have to come into council to lodge the applications. You have to lodge it through basically an online portal, which is the New South Wales Planning Portal. That's a state government initiated portal where all applications now, not just the development applications, but also the building applications have to be mandated to be lodged through the online portal. The New South Wales Planning Portal does have the ability to sort of obviously drag and drop documents in there, plans, your documents, your reports, etc., that you need to lodge the application. We've got some checklists on our website, depending on the type of application and the basic information that we need to enable the lodgement of that application. Once that's lodged through the New South Wales Planning Portal, we've got a front end, a development advisory team that'll review the application and get in touch with you or the applicant if we require more information. Now, that happens probably within the first 7 days of when the application is lodged through the New South Wales Planning Portal. And depending on obviously, the back and forth of that information, and if we're satisfied with that all the information is there, we proceed to formally lodge the application on our system as well. At that point, the applicant will get the invoice to pay the relevant application fee. After that, we've got basically a clearinghouse or a front of house team that basically does a thorough review of that application. So say, for instance, we look at plans in more detail and we look at the documents that's submitted in more detail. The reason why we have a front of house clearing team is just to make sure that we've got all the information there available, one, and two, it's accurate information that's available as well, because we don't want to delay the processing of that application as well. The reason why we place a large emphasis on the front of house clearing team is to make sure that once the application hits the assessment officer's desk, they've got all the information there in front of them to basically sort of to do a timely assessment of that application. I'll just talk to you briefly about the Morrison payment method. At this point, we sort of emailed through and we put it on the planning portal of what the invoice payable is. Once that's paid, we're notified that that's been paid, and that can be paid online. And that only then do we start processing the actual application. Next slide, please, Daniel. So, thanks. Just in terms of the actual assessment process, I've sort of taken you through the initial, the clearinghouse team. Once that application is formally accepted and the fees are paid, it goes to our administration team effectively to enable the neighbour notification process, which is usually 14 days. And depending on the type of application, we notify it on the council website. We send the adjoining properties letters that there's an application lodged. We open it up for public comment and obviously exhibition. The actual application is then obviously assigned to a case officer, and they'll be in contact with you once they get the application with their contact details as well, so you can contact them through the whole process of the assessment. The way we do things, because we've got a pretty robust pre-lodgement and an initial review system, we generally we try to avoid issuing additional information letters. But obviously, we understand that sometimes after a more thorough review following the assessment, we may require additional information just to clarify a few things, whether it's planning related, engineering related, or landscape related, etc. We generally, ask for additional information only once, and that's just to make sure that we keep on processing the applications in a timely manner. What we want is obviously, the applications to go from, the lodgement stage to obviously approval and to construction, and we've got a process in place that facilitates that from start to finish. So we just request the additional information only once, and we normally give the applicants 14 days or 21 days to come back to us with that information. And that's obviously reassessed by the planning officers, and obviously if it all ticks all the boxes in terms of the planning controls, it's recommended for approval, and it goes to a senior officer for peer review and to determine that application. Now with Cumberland, like our KPIs, we try to sort of assess and determine 50% of applications within 90 days, and that's our KPI, and we try to sort of try to stick to that as much as we can. In terms of who determines, I saw some questions coming through in terms of who actually determines the application. Largely, a lot of the applications are determined under delegation by council officers. There are certain applications that need to go to the Cumberland Local Planning Panel or the Regional Planning Panel. That's depending on the cost of works, or whether it's a controversial application where it's got more than 10 objections, or whether it's a residential flat building, it straight away goes to an independent planning panel, which is the Cumberland Planning Panel. We make recommendations on those applications, and ultimately the decision is out of council's hands, and it goes to that planning panel for the decision. And that those applications are flagged pretty early by the team, and the applicants or the developers are aware that that's the process. We've got monthly meetings with the Cumberland Local Planning Panel, so that there's that sort of flow on, so that there's timely meetings and the applications process in a timely manner as well. So that's in a nutshell the assessment process and the process that we follow here at Cumberland. A lot more information on this is available on our website, and there's a lot of information in terms of the checklist as well, in terms of the information that we need to enable lodgement as well. That's pretty much my presentation on the applications part. Happy to open it up to any questions that you had for us.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Cavello, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Shankar, and Mr. Monosky. Before we move on to the Q&A session, I would like to acknowledge that we now have more than 3,500 people watching through our live broadcast channel, much more than we expected. It shows that the Chinese investors and developers are very interested in the Cumberland City Council. And I would like to thank all of our fans and viewers from City Media Australia. Thanks very much for your support. Now we are going to move on to the Q&A session. So the first question is about rezone area. One of our fans give us an address, 46 Adelaide Street East, Lickham, and he or she would like to know that if this address count into the rezone area.
That one there, what we'll do, we'll take that away and we'll provide that information tomorrow on that particular address.
Okay, no problem. Thank you very much. And the second question is, will the draft LEP affect the proposal when we lodge the CDC or the DA, or we just need to worry about the current LEP?
Yeah, so with the LEP, so going forward, any application will look at the Cumberland LEP. So in terms of the CDC or DA, those aspects won't change because the heritage areas are the same, the conservation areas are still the same. So there won't be any impact in terms of those aspects. So the normal rules with CDC and DAs will apply. In the future, if there's changes to locations for heritage or locations for environmental protection, then obviously there'll be changes then, but they're separate changes going through a separate process. And there'll be notification of those should those eventuate and be changed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cavello. Next question is, will each project go to LPP or is that subject to the development value?
Yep, I'll answer this one, Daniel. So just as I briefly touched on before, it depends on the cost of works. Usually, if it's more than $30 million cost of works, that goes to a regional planning panel for determination. And if there's controversial developments where it attracts 10 objections, that goes to a local planning panel. And if it's say for a DA, which is for a residential flat building, that again goes to the Cumberland local planning panel. So it depends on the kind of DA it is, and also based on cost of works, and those trigger whether it goes to a local planning panel or a regional planning panel.
Thank you very much.
In terms of planning proposals, all planning proposals go to the CLPP, the planning panel, regardless of the value.
Thank you very much. And next question is, what is the Council's position on affordable housing policy in regards to the new amendment to SEPP?
So in terms of the policy, Council's got a range of policies at a local level around affordable housing. So Council's supportive of affordable housing and looks at opportunities for affordable housing and development. We also know there's the state environmental planning policy that facilitates affordable rental housing. And we know that in terms of the housing Sepp, we know there's been recent amendments in terms of definitions of boarding houses and the like, and how seniors living applies. So in terms of those changes, Council will apply the changes as provided by the state, and those will be considered as part of applications. We also look at affordable housing in terms of the planning proposal and look at opportunities to provide affordable housing as part of the value uplift or as part of a development that's in the rezoning phase. So for us, it's really a case of applying the new definitions and new policies around state government, and those complement the policies and the work that council's done in that space. And council, as an example, have negotiated as part of voluntary planning agreements for rezoning's new affordable housing to be provided as part of a development that would be transferred over the council to manage. So we've got interest in that space, and outside of those opportunities, we also rely on what the state can provide and the new policies and the previous policies on that.
Thank you very much. Next quick question is regarding Parramatta Road. With the completion of West Connex M4, is Cumberland City Council considering any significant changes now or in the future to Parramatta Road, in particular to the revitalize the corridor?
So in terms of Parramatta Road, our strategic plans identifies it as a strategic corridor. A lot of the development from a strategic framework is led by the state government. So the state government is allowing applicants to submit planning proposals that are consistent with the zonings. And in terms of the land in Cumberland City Council, a lot of that land is really based on business and commercial and industrial zoning. And there are 2 locations identified in the state strategy where there's potential for rezoning in the future for mixed use development. And those sites, we've been talking to those landowners for a number of years around those proposals. And when they're ready to lodge, they'll proceed. So for council, that's the planning approach to that. In terms of supporting growth and change in Parramatta Road, the state government's provided funding to provide improved footpaths and access along Parramatta Road. We've received money to increase Auburn Park in terms of its size to provide more open space for the growing community. And we're also looking at improvements to the public domain, which is sort of the streetscape and the landscaping on that. So those improvements are being planned and delivered as we speak, and they should start being finalised over the next 1 to 2 years. And in parallel to that, we're working with state government and landowners in terms of future development on the corridor. I'm pleased with Parramatta Road. We are getting DAs for existing use, and we are getting DAs for significant uplift in commercial, significant uplift in industrial, and significant uplift in business type uses. So we've got companies investing in there in terms of head offices. We've got companies investing in terms of more warehousing. We've got companies investing in terms of bulky goods and looking at first mile, last mile logistics. So there's a lot of interest in the corridor, and we're looking at big companies such as Costco and Woolworths investing in the area, as well as smaller companies investing in the area. So there's a lot of things happening in the area. A lot of that's in the planning space. So over the next 1 to 3 years, we'll start seeing those built and being delivered.
Thank you very much. And next question is, will the new LEP and the DCP affect S4.55 of the already determined applications?
I'll get Jay to answer that one.
Yeah, no worries. So any applications that have already been determined or approved by council, the new planning controls won't have an effect because you already got the approval for that. Going forward, should any applications come in or should any like section 4.55 applications come in, they'll be sort of assessed under the new planning controls, and that's from the 5th of November when the Cumberland LEP was gazetted, and obviously the Cumberland DCP came into effect from that date as well. Any applications lodged before then, the existing or the planning controls at the time applies. So say for instance, as an example, if an application was lodged early on this year under the Auburn LEP and the Auburn DCP, and it hasn't been determined as of yet, those controls will apply to that application.
Thank you very much. Next question is still regarding to this topic. If there is any guideline or a standard we can follow to judge if the S4.55 is required for a minor change of design.
Yep. So in terms of the modifications under the Planning Act, there is effectively 3 types. One is a 4.551 where there's an error or a misdescription, and that's a fairly straightforward application. There is a minor modification, and then there's more of a major modification, and the minor one is known as 4.551A, and the major one is 4.552. Now, the minor one, effectively what the Planning Act says, it has to be minimal environmental impact. And we've effectively got a development inquiry team or the duty officers, which effectively can help you classify whether like things are minor or major. Largely, it's up to the applicants sort of to let us know what the impacts are, and then we can sort of assess it accordingly. But if in doubt, we've got a team up front that can assist you with that before the application is lodged. So say, for instance, you've got as an example, you've got a duplex approved and you want to make some very, very minor internal changes or or to change the colors and so forth, we can classify that as a minor application. But whereas if you want to put, more floor area or change windows and add in more windows where the impact is more substantial, that we would classify that as a 4.552 application, and we would treat that accordingly or assess that accordingly.
Thank you very much. Next question is, instead of buying the stormwater easement from back neighbor, is there any other solutions for duplex site with slope land to the back in previous Parramatta Council area?
Yep. So as Daniel said, we're working off now any applications lodged from the 5th of November. We're working off the Cumberland DCP, and in the Cumberland DCP, the stormwater sections of that DCP is a lot more flexible than the former Auburn, Parramatta, and Holroyd DCPs. We can look at alternate options for duplexes, but that's subject to that alternate measures working. So say, for instance, if the site has a significant slope to the rear, easement may be the only option, but say if it's got a slight slope where, council does have the ability and the flexibility in the new DCP to consider other options as well. So, the easement is not the only option, but there are other options that we can consider, but that's subject to the site constraints and the assessment.
Thank you very much. And next question is a bit of an insider joke, but what are your thoughts on TRIM?
Yeah, this is an insider joke, and thanks, Tony, for asking this. Actually, I think a lot of local government professionals don't understand this. TRIM is effectively a document management system. What are my thoughts on it? I grew up in local government using that system. I still think it works really well, but we work off a different system now, a cloud-based system, which has really helped us through the pandemic. So when everyone sort of can work remotely and get the job done. But yeah, look, I'm a bit of a traditionalist because I grew up on TRIM. I still think it's a very, very useful document management system. But we use Tech One now in council, so we don't use TRIM anymore.
Yeah. That's all of the questions that have been collected. Is there a video that we want to share from Natalie? Hello?
Yes, so we had the video, it's still in production. I apologize, but I will send that out to the members as soon as it's done. It's just a representation of Cumberland back to business and what we have available moving forward in December and January. But while I have everyone here, I do want to sort of turn your eye to the Cumberland City Investment Prospectus that we have available as well for those who are interested in looking at the economic profile and the investment profile of Cumberland City. So if anyone's interested in that, please reach out to me and I'm happy to have a chat with you on that. I do want to acknowledge that Natalie is in the room as well, and she's our business engagement coordinator. And we have another staff member who looks after economic development. So if anyone is interested in those parts of council, I'm more than happy to connect you with those staff members and they can help you out with the process of investing and developing in council as well.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone who want to say something? Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Cavello, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Shankar, and Mr. Monosky for sharing such great content with us. And thank you to all of our viewers for joining today's event. If you would like to be more involved in our events, please subscribe to our WeChat official account. If you would like to become our member, please add our WeChat assistant for more information. Don't forget, all of our recordings for our events will be on our YouTube channel. Search Chinese Building Association of NSW and subscribe. You can find all of our past and future recordings there. Thank you very much for supporting the CBA in New South Wales. And that concludes our program for today. See you next time.
Thanks, everyone.